What's going on, everyone? I'm on with the amazing Joe Giglietti, which I've known you for, I don't know, it's been like 10 years, which I can't even believe now, but
Yeah, man.
excited to have you, man. Really excited to chat for a little bit.
Nice to hang out with you and the crew here. And
Yeah, yeah.
they're going to be shocked that we're going to talk about money, aren't they?
They have zero inclination of my beliefs.
Yes.
It's very, very surprising what I believed in now.
I hate money, so I'm here to represent the socialist position. I'm just kidding.
Yeah, sweet, sweet. Where's that end button? I should hang up right now.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
No, it's funny. I actually, thinking about this morning, I was getting up, getting ready, and I was just thinking about, the first time I met you was, I think it was actually 10 years ago. Um, you're walking into Russell's office and we were building the funnel, I think, for your daughter's book. I
Hmm.
think, I think it was it.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
then, I don't know, you just exploded. I mean, you're doing, you're doing like the next tier of business that I feel like a lot of people in this group would be interested in. Like you gotta master the skill sets of marketing and entrepreneurship and all that. But tell everyone kind of what you're doing right now, because you're doing. I feel like the next tier of big boy business.
Yeah. Yeah.
But using the skill sets that this world really starts to learn and understand.
I almost feel, I mean, in some ways, I really appreciate the skill sets of all the marketing, and I love that. But it's funny. Have you ever met someone, Steven, and they're like, dude, they have no marketing skills whatsoever. They don't even actually know how to make money. But what they're really good at is like finding like really good, yeah, I think of private equity people, right? They just
Mm,
find deals that are
yeah.
already making money, and then they're just like, yeah, I'll take that. And they just find really smart people to do it. And it's like that's kind of the game, right? When at the end of the day, what we're doing when we're building businesses for all, I imagine like most of the group that we're talking to here is entrepreneurs. There may be some people who have a job as well, but most people are either spending their whole life to like get a big piece of cash, I think. Like as an entrepreneur, it's like two comma club or two
Yeah.
comma club X, right? And it's like, let's get the big pile of cash. And I'm a fan of that. Big round of applause for piles of cash. Ladies and
Yeah. Yeah.
gentlemen,
Ladies and
that's
gentlemen, piles of
absolutely
cash.
it. It's wonderful. It's wonderful. It really is. But there's something to be said for the people who just like are constantly building up, not just cash, but cash flow.
Yeah. And rude awakening when you realize which one's one more important.
Yes. Yes.
Two very different skill sets.
Well, I think we've all heard the quote like cash ain't king, cash flow is king, right?
Yep.
And I think a lot of times, especially in the entrepreneur world, but definitely in the like 9 to 5 business world, we're focused on cash, not
Mm.
cash flow. And that's been my shift lately. It's like, how do I build things that have cash flow? So that,
What was it that like highlighted the difference for you?
well, I do these like a lot of us inside the entrepreneur community. I do these events, and the events are really, really profitable. But
Yeah.
there were several people that I met along the way who whose life didn't look like this.
Sprinting 24/7.
Right,
There's a
right,
badge of honor is burnout.
right, right. And they're just there. I mean, I know some people that are just like absolutely crushing it and like honor. And I enjoy a good run just like the next guy. I enjoy the hustle here and there again. But I would meet these people, Steven. Have you guys met them where they're like this, and they're just it's just piles of money. Just it's just coming in, and it doesn't stop. They don't have to do anything new. They're just kind of like. By the way, have you ever read uh, I'm sure you have Matthew chapter 25, the parable of the talents? Like Jesus,
Yeah.
I'm working on a book right now about it. Jesus tells a story about consider this: entrepreneurship, money, and influence.
Love
Okay,
it.
he's so relevant. Anyways, he tells the story, and in the story, I won't bore you with the whole story, but because everybody's heard the story before, it's like there's a great king, and the king wants to establish his kingdom, but he's got to go away to get it, and so he gives talents to his people. He gives 5 talents to one, 2 talents to one, 1 talent to the other. Okay, and the guy with 5 doubles with the guy with 2, doubles with the guy with 1. Of course, he's afraid. He hides his talent in the ground. He's scared to lose money. Anybody know what I'm talking about? When you're afraid to lose money, you know that life. It ain't a good life, right? And the end of the story comes: the man with 5 doubles, the man with 2 doubles, the man with 1 is actually rebuked. He's called lazy and wicked by the master in the story. And at the end of the story, like, whatever, all the things happen. Here's my point. In the story, I've asked a lot of people this because everyone's heard this story. Who's the hero of the story? And everyone
Mm.
says, it's the five talent man. I'm like, I feel you because it's like, it's definitely not the two talent man. He just did the same thing, but just with less money. And it can't be the one talent man because well, he's the example that's made of in the story. And I'm like, no, it's not the five talent man. And it's not the two talent man. And you're right, it's definitely not the one talent man. The hero in that story is the master. Because what's the master do? The master, by the way, five talents is about $4 million. Dollars. Two talents is about 1.6 million. Okay. He
Wow.
dropped $6 million and went on vacation. And when he came back, his money was almost doubled. Somebody say passive income.
Yeah, I'm right. Yeah, we were right. That passive income. We write
Right.
that in there.
And I get it. Like passive isn't completely passive because he has to come back and deal with the dummy.
Basically. Yeah.
Who didn't actually double the money, who didn't take care of it the way that he need to. So I don't want to make like, oh yeah, you never do anything again. Like that's not the point. But I mean, there is a level of wealth and cash flow building that you can do that allows you to have money coming in even without apparent effort. And that life is different.
It's different in a different mentality and skill set, and I know it's funny. I have a lot of admiration toward the hustlers. I certainly have been that and know what that's like. And it's inevitable burnout. And
Yeah.
I thought I was the Energizer Bunny. Energizer Bunny, nothing's gonna burn me out.
Mhm.
It's not true. It took about 4 or 5 years, and then I burnt out really, really hard, and kind of disappeared for a little bit. And was like, "What's going on? Something's wrong with me. I can't come up with any good ideas." It was burnout, just
Yeah.
hardcore burnout.
Yep. Yep.
And then coming back to it, putting back on this shirt again, I was like, oh man, you know what? One of the foundations of capitalism is collaboration. So good on that master for turning back around and collaborating. And I was trying to be a one man show, and that's not sustainable or leverage. What do you think it is that someone has to go through? Like, how do you take the same project where it's cash producing, but then make it cash flow producing?
Yeah. Well,
You know what I mean?
like you said, it's a different skill set to make money than it is to make money work for you,
Mm,
right? And so, for example, one of my first masterminds that I joined, the leader of the mastermind said to me, he said, "Listen, Joe," he's like, "I'm going to show you how to make." I invested $55,000 into this mastermind. He said, "I'm going to get you your money back like immediately. I'm going to tell you one piece of advice, and I'm going to tell you how to do this, and it'll change the game for you financially." And I'm like, "Okay, you
mm.
guys want to hear it?" I spent 55 grand to hear it. By the way, he was 100% right.
Please.
Okay,
Yeah.
so here's
Yeah.
what he said to do. He's like, Joe, he's like, right now, okay, and the purpose of this story, just so you know, is like once you understand the way this works, you don't even have to change how much you make. You can literally just change how you hold your money, and you will make significantly more cash flow. And I'm going to prove it. I'll
Mm.
give you an example right now. So it's like,
Great. Yeah.
isn't that weird? It's like I don't have to make more. I just have to hold it differently. And I was like, okay, like walk me through this. And he's like, Joe, he's like, and by the way, like shameless plug, I'm doing a full 5 day event, VIP, like 1 hour a day plus an hour of Q&A every day to teach you this whole process. So if y'all want to come, it's free right now. So you can come join us for free. It's going to be a lot of fun. But here's what my 55K mentor taught me. He's like, Joe, right now, you like, let's say you go sell something as an entrepreneur, you get your paycheck as a as a 95 employee, you get a big stack of cash. What do you do with the cash? And I'm like, well, I pay bills. I say, no, no, no. Before that, the money goes where? And I'm like, well, it goes into my checking account. He's like, yes. And then what do you do? I'm like, well, then, like, I pay my mortgage, I pay my rent, or my mortgage, my electric, I pay well, all the things I need to pay. Anybody else here have bills? Right? I pay all the things.
Sure.
Right?
Yeah.
Somehow they never forget to send me a letter. They're getting some cash flow. I know that. I know the
Yeah.
electric is getting some cash flow, right? And so all this is like it comes in and then it goes out. He's like, yeah, yeah, yeah. He's like, now watch this. He's like, you're not going to believe me when I tell you this, and I don't have time to explain the whole thing, Stephen. But nevertheless, he'll go. Hmm. He said, what if there's this thing called a HELOC? Anybody heard of a HELOC? I'm sure you have home equity line of
Yeah,
credit. Some
sure.
people have them second position. It's actually better when it's first position, but I don't have time to deal with all that right now. He said, Joe, he's like, what I want you to do is I want you to go and you want to get a home equity line of credit on your house. That allows you to put your money into the HELOC and take your money out. Because like I bought a $2 million house. And so if I have a HELOC on the house instead of a mortgage, let's say I owed 1.5 million, or let's just say 1 million for easy math. I owed $1 million on the house and I had 1 million in equity. Let me ask you all a question. Can you spend your equity? Like you can't just like go grab it anytime you want it, right? You got to refinance, do a cash refinance on all this other stuff. If you get a HELOC on the whole thing, I could get a HELOC to 80% and I could be at what's that? 1.6 million. Sorry, lots of math, Steven. This is bad of me to do. Right? But nevertheless, 1.6 million, that means I would have access to up to 1.7 $600,000. If I owe 1 million, I got $600,000 in free money that I can use to grow. But here's the more important thing. Let's say I get, well, I have to use bigger numbers because I used the $2 million. Let's say I get $50,000 that I take out of my business each month for paying bills and all and just living life, right? So when I take that 50,000, I used to put it in the checking account, but now I'm going to put it instead of in the checking account into my HELOC. So instead of my balance being 1 million, it's now 950,000.
Hmm.
Then from that same account, just like normal, I don't have to increase how much money I'm making, how much I'm reducing. I just pay my bills out of there. They give you a checkbook. You can also pay things electronically. You can pay it through debit card. I don't know if y'all are familiar with this, but it's like you pay it all out of there. Now here's what happens. The whole time
Wow.
that $50,000 is in there, guess what you're not paying interest on? That $50,000 that's part of the interest. You're saving yourself $50,000 that would be principal balance that your interest needs to get paid on. Here's what happens when you do that. The average person, by simply holding their money differently, pays off their mortgage in 5 to 7 years
What?
instead of 30. So I got a question.
Really?
Yes. Would you rather pay 25 extra years on your mortgage of interest or just 5 to 7 years in interest?
Wow.
By the way, most people mess it up even worse because they're like, oh, my home appreciated. I'm going to do a cash out refinance to get some of that money so I can do it. Let me ask you a question. How much money does it cost you to do the cash out refinance? Like,
Couple points, isn't it?
yeah, like three. So if you have a $500,000 house, cost you 15 grand plus some other stuff. And it's like, but notice what happens. Let's say you were owning the house for 10 years. You do a cash out refinance. You do another 30-year mortgage. Guess what you're paying now? 10 more years of interest.
Wow.
You understand?
Yep.
And so this
They
is
got you.
one,
The
this
double
is
dip.
one little change, right? So in Australia, they do this. It's called, I forget what they call it in Australia. The average person in Australia owns two homes. And they own those two homes free and clear on average in 14 years. Is that because they make more money? Nope. They don't make more money. It's because they use this system. They don't use mortgages like we do. They hold their money in open-ended lines of credit that can go in and out. No change in income, just changing in how we hold the money. They're reducing the average homeowner saves $150,000 off of their mortgage. And that's just like a, $200,000-$300,000 house. By the way, who has the biggest houses in town? The banks. Who has the small houses in town? Us. You know why? Because whenever you buy a house, you buy two houses. You buy a house for
That's
the bank
clever.
first, and then you buy a house for you.
Hmm.
You buy a house for the bank first with all the interest. Anybody notice this? You get a house. How much of the balance when you're first starting to pay goes towards your principal? Like,
Like nothing.
right,
So small for like 15 years or
right,
something like that, right?
right. How much goes towards the principal? And it's zero. How much goes to interest? Almost everything
All
else.
of it.
Not
Yeah.
only do you buy two houses, you buy the bank's house first and your house second. But when you switch it around, right, and you use a first position HELOC, now you actually pay the principal off first and the interest off second. And you have access to your equity to be able to use to make other investments. So some of you right now are sitting on piles and piles of cash, and your big concern is, how do I make more money? No, wrong question. How do you make the money you're already making work for you better?
I never considered. Someone else was talking about HELOCs once. And I was like, oh, it's interesting, but no one's explained it that well. It's always been a muddled kind of concept. I've never actually heard someone use it in that way. Where you're like,
Hey,
that's
bro, it's not
fascinating.
just you. Because when I
Yeah.
heard this, I was like, what I did is I went, oh, that's cool. Yeah, bro. Thanks, man. Really appreciate that. Right. And I didn't do it. 2 years later, I got a client who started like explaining this to me. And by the way, he's going to come on. He's an expert. He's helped 8,000 people do this.
On
He's
on
gonna be
your
on
event,
the
he's doing
event
it.
on Cash.
Oh,
He's
I can't
day
wait.
one. Okay. He's going to be
Okay.
on. And anyways, I started doing it with him, and he had this calculator where I could like figure out exactly what the numbers that I would save. So I put my personal numbers in to see like, wait a second. My mentor told me to do this 2 years ago, so I went to look to see how much. Now, granted, my house is higher, higher ticket is a $2 million house, but nevertheless, I went and looked to see how much money did I lose had I
Hmm.
did it when he said it versus if I would have did it right now, and I lost $300,000,
Oh, okay.
right?
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh, this is real. Okay. And that does not count all of the money I would have had access to that I could have put to work that is available as equity in my house. Because the house I bought for 2 million is worth closer to 3 million. So I got $1 million in equity that's sitting there dormant doing nothing. The problem isn't for many of you that you don't have enough, like you're not doing this enough. The problem is that the resources you already have aren't even close to being maximized. They're not even being touched. And by the way, this is just step one. The first step is just like the way to increase your cash flow is twofold. One, the one we always think about is make more money. The other one is significantly reduce expenses and reinvest the profit of that expense reduction into cash flowing assets. And you will be surprised how quickly people are able to turn what is their 9 to 5 or their typical salary coming in from their business, completely replace it all from assets that are paying them without apparent effort. But it's a
Dude,
different skill set.
it is. It's a totally different skill set. So, okay, quick story. I love Russell.
Yeah,
Right,
me
Russell
too.
Brunson's the man.
My homie.
Um, yeah, yeah, my homie, right? And I had a buddy who was telling me. He said, um, I said I want to learn how to make my money make more money, just like you're talking about, right? I
Right.
got I got to figure that skill set out. So I started going diving deep into it, and he calls me. He goes, "What are you doing? Stop buying bookshelves full of books." And I was like, "Why is that?" And he said, because your skill set, not that you have to keep hustling like crazy, but you built an entire career around this one thing. There are other people who are better at doing it than you are. Stop trying to go learn two careers. And I fought him on it. I was like, no, I got to know how to do it. I got to know how to do everything myself. I got to be the one that does it all, And he said the market is literally going to pay you to get better at your skill set of the thing that you do out in the marketplace, and go to those who actually know what the heck they're talking about. And I was talking to Russell about this and telling him the story, and he looked at me, and hopefully it's okay if I share this, but he looked at me and he goes, please listen to what this guy's telling you. I was like, really? He goes, I need to tell you, I have nothing to show for the first 10 years of my entrepreneurship journey. And it's because I had no active plan, right? I know if money just sits in an account, it just finds a new home. There's no
Yep.
active plan,
Yep.
nothing. And he's like, you get over there and you start learning immediately. So what you're doing, I didn't even realize that you've been diving down this lane here. I can't wait to learn. Because I don't want to go learn. I actually don't want to go through what you've had to go through to learn what you've learned.
Well, it's the same principle again as that Matthew 25 story. Because notice
Yeah, there we go.
the master of the story doesn't ask, how do I do this? He went and found capable people. The scripture literally says he gave to each man according to his ability. So he invested into people based on their ability to multiply. And so if you can find the people who are already doing it and then just listen and work together with them, you don't have to learn everything, right? You got to find the right people. And so that's what we've tried to do is assemble the right people for Cash Flow Empire with the goal of there's plenty of people out there teaching like how to make a bunch of money for whether it's online marketing or whatever, but
Sure.
cash flow is a different skill set.
Yeah.
And so I heard you know him, but I won't mention his name. But he used to he ran a business that made about 90 million a year, so he was doing okay. And he was talking with another guy who's very famous influencer in the entrepreneur space, who you're friends with, whose name rhymes with Kermosi. And
Hello, Roma.
and they were talking to
Hello.
each other, and he was sharing this conversation with me. He's like, yeah, they were marveling to each other because they said, the wealthier I get, the less I buy.
Mm.
And I was like, oh, like you don't shop for as much because you already have what you need. No, no. He's like, no, 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 that's not what we were saying. He's like if I want a Rolex, I don't go buy a Rolex. And I was like, somebody buys it for you. He's like, well, kind of. He's like, when you get to a certain level and you've mastered not only how to create wealth, whether that's through a business, marketing, et cetera, but then also how to grow your cash flow. He's like, I don't buy things. My things buy me things.
Mm.
And that's the level I'm talking about. That's why on day two, we got another guy that you know of, good friend of ours, Bill Allen, and he's coming in to
Oh,
talk about how they create cash flow from real estate. And many times with no money down, it's just a skill set, right? That they do. But the idea is to own it so that it creates cash flow. And so day
wow.
one, we're like, hey, how do I figure out how to access more money and how to manage it differently so that it just automatically reduces expenses and increases my access to capital? Then we're like, okay, how do we have the skill set that allows us to acquire assets that pay us for life, right? But then on day three, we're like, here's what happens. I mean, because I started in real estate. That's where I started before I got into marketing. That's where I cut
Me
my.
too, actually.
Okay, yeah, yeah. Because
Yeah,
we talked about wholesaling houses
yeah.
and stuff like
Yeah,
that and
yeah.
all that kind of stuff,
Double
right?
escrows trying to, yeah,
Yeah,
and I
yeah,
sucked
yeah.
at it.
All that stuff, right? And
Yeah,
you and
man.
I both know what happens because this happened to me back when I was in the struggle bubble and broke as a joke. I would come across these deals and I'd be like, oh my gosh. And I'd have to like wholesale it off to somebody else, knowing that they were going to make $100,000, $150,000 on this deal. And I'm like, we do this a lot. We go, how many of you said this? Well, I would do that, but I don't have the money,
Yeah.
right? And I've got good news for all of you who know marketing and who love marketing like we do. I was listening to Elon Musk. He's a pretty decent capitalist and entrepreneur, I would say. I mean, he's all right.
He's up there.
Yeah. And I remember he was in this interview. I never forgot this. It was, you know how Elon is. He was in this interview with a reporter. And this was early on. This was before like Tesla was working like crazy or SpaceX. It was earlier on. And they're interviewing him. They're saying, you're involved in all these projects. They said, how are you able to access so much capital to be involved in all these projects? I'll never forget Elon's mental syntax team. More is caught than taught. That's why you got to get in the room with greatness, okay? More is caught than taught. Elon Musk looks at the reporter, and you know how Elon's so smart and he just gets annoyed with people's stupid questions?
I
That's
love
what he
that.
did. He was like, he goes, raising capital is purely a matter of how many phone calls you're willing to make. Next question. And I'm like, I back then I heard that when I was what I call broke Joe, when I was in broke version of myself. And I was like, wait a second. We all think accessing capital is hard in order to do this, but actually raising capital is the exact same marketing most of us are doing all the time to grow our businesses. Accessing capital is just a matter of how many appointments you can get.
Wow. It's interesting you say that. There's a client, a guy I was going to work with for quite a while. He was doing massive capital raising stuff, and he looked at me. I'll never forget this. And he goes, "Steven, you've made what most people in the world would consider riches."
Yeah.
Like, yeah. He goes, "But you want to know why you're not wealthy?" I
Hmm.
said, "Tell me." And he goes, "The number one reason you're not wealthy is because you've never learned how to raise money correctly." And I was like, "Huh, that's fascinating." But I like what you're talking about. You don't even have to do that. You're shifting my own brain. You don't have to go do that. You just hold the money differently.
Yeah, you hold the money differently, but you're going to find deals that you're going to want more,
Yeah.
right? And then you're like, okay, well, this is a deal that I would buy if I had the money. This language is is the language of lack.
The
True.
language of lack. Oh,
Okay? This is the language of lack, right? You don't actually lack resources. No one actually lacks resources. We all just lack resourcefulness.
mm,
The answer to your access to capital question is just an access to people question. And
there you
so,
go.
what I teach on day three of Cashflow Empire Live is how to raise $500,000 in 60 days or less without ever asking anyone for the money. Because if you're
That,
asking, you're doing it wrong. You never have to ask. You never
that's
have
really
to.
exciting.
And I think this
I'm
is
really
the reason
excited
why
for
a
this
lot of
event,
people
man.
don't do more deals. One, they don't know, they're like, I would do deals. I've talked to so many entrepreneurs, 9 to 5ers, like, I would love to own some more assets that pay me so I can at least replace my income, whether it's from the business you own or it's from the job that you're in. They want to replace their income so they have that freedom. But they're like, I can't because I don't have access to money. And it's like, that's the lie. Because I took a lady who was literally a single mom, terrible like relationship issue happened. She knew no one but broke pastors across the US. She's like, I've done all the study on real estate and I find great deals. I just don't know how to get the money. And I'm like, that's easy. I said, you'll have a $500,000 in 60 days. Just do what I said. She had a $500,000 in like 40 days. She never asked anyone for the money. Okay.
What?
Because it's just a skill. And most of you, funny enough, already have the skill. You already have it.
You just use it in a different
Yes, you're
lens.
using it in a different context and you just don't
I'm
realize.
excited to learn that from you, man. I had no idea. That's really cool. I've always wanted to know that.
Yeah.
You know,
Well, then it's
I'm
like
always,
last one more thing that I'll just say. It's like how you hold your money. Beside what happens, and this happens for a lot of people, like once they figure this out, if it only takes you 5 to 7 years to pay your home off, and now you've got all of that, like let's say you own a whatever $800,000 house. Well, you have access to about $800,000 in equity, but you can't like pay your HELOC down to negative money. So what do you do with money from there? And this is another one of my clients that you met. You just hold it differently. Did you all know? I could not believe this when I heard it. And these are just the little things. You don't know it till you get in the right room. I was talking with this guy, super financially successful. And I was like, yeah, I don't remember the joke I made. I made something like, too bad I can't use my money more than once. Because it's like, let's say I have 10 grand and I go, okay, I'm going to invest 10 grand somewhere. When I put that 10 grand somewhere else, it's there, right?
yeah.
And so it's going to make whatever return it makes. And he's like, oh, you didn't know? Like you can mirror your money.
What?
Mirror? What do you mean mirror? He's like, yeah, you can mirror it. You mean like duplicate it? I'm like, yeah. I'm like, oh, you put it in and then it doubles and then you use it. He's like, no, no, no. You can use the same money in two places at one time.
I guess that's what the bank's doing.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
never thought about that.
Yeah. You can well, for the bank, it's even better. The bank can use the same money 10 places at one time
Oh, that's
because
true too.
because of fractional reserve lending, right? So when you make deposits, they now have access to 10 times that they can all put out. But there's actually a way that you can do that somewhere between 2 and 3 times. There are instruments that you can do that. And it's called, and some of you may have heard of the concept, but it's called infinite banking. And
Yeah.
so I brought in an expert to like explain this to me, and like sure enough, like you can put your money into this different holding structure. Now it has to be set up a very specific way, but they set it up into this holding structure. So I can put, let's call it 100 grand. You put 100 grand in, and that money is making a return, but you can also borrow against that money and use it somewhere else to do real estate deals or business deals or spend money on advertising that you're going to multiple on, whatever it is
Dude.
that you're using. It's still making money over here and it's making money over here at the same time.
So
That's day four. Just so you know.
that's like, and then you smash all those concepts together, that collapses decades.
Yes. 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 Which is
That
why you would
changes.
want access to more capital. Because if you could mirror money, wouldn't it be awesome if you could put it in? And it's like, these are not new concepts. This is not like, oh my gosh, Joe has figured out
Right.
the magic fairy dust. No, no, no. This is what the wealthy have been doing for centuries.
That's crazy cool, man. I had no idea actually. Um I know the event, maybe we won't say dates or whatever. We could put the dates
Yeah.
wherever they go, but I'm excited to attend it. I'm excited to attend it for a very personal reason, which I'll share quick too, which is that so I went through my divorce and all the respect towards my ex-wife and all that stuff and
Sure.
it's great and all that stuff, but they split your business in half, right? Goes to the other side. So I'm getting chopped in half. They bring in a business valuator. And at the time, it was about 4 or 5 years ago, I was crossing like 8 million in sales. And as I was crossing this 8 million, they sat me down and said, hey, your business is worth, and I'm trying to, what
You're
is it?
excited. You're like Grant Cardone on that moment when they're going to give the valuation at the end of
Yeah, I'm like,
the,
tell me
right?
what it
Yeah.
is,
Yeah.
And they said your business is barely worth, and we're actually bumping it up a little, 500,000. And I was like, what? I mean, I was grateful but pissed, right? I was
Right.
grateful but kind of frustrated.
Right.
And like, your business is only worth $500,000. You have built for yourself a machine that makes money But since you are the face, you are the business, you are the marketer, you don't have a business.
Right.
And I sat there, and I got to tell you, there's another reason why kind of the floor fell out for me for a little bit. I was like, man, am I gonna have to go learn how to build a different type of business, a different entrepreneur model, a different. And for about a year, though, I kind of got a little distracted until one day I realized, what if I just kept my business the way my skill set to what it is, right? I'm not going to sprint. I'll learn better leverage, all that kind of stuff. Instead, I'm going to use my business and just go hunt cash flowing hard assets. I'm not going to try to build this enterprise value thing with the attractive character model. That's not what they're meant for. I'm not going to go with the info product model. It's not
Right.
meant for enterprise value. But for those of us who know how to do that stuff and in the funnel space, I think what you're talking about, it is the other side of the same coin. You don't want to end up going, I'm past it $8 million. Oh man, I'm only worth half a million. And then being like, where did I put that cash? Because that's kind of what happened to me. So I'm really excited to come to the event.
Yeah,
Um,
I think that's the pain and scary thing for every entrepreneur who's doing this. Like they're building something. It's like you can
Painful.
create a lot of money from your effort and from your skill sets, which is awesome. But you're doing literally what Kiyosaki said, right? Kiyosaki said
Yeah. Yeah.
businesses, and then you take the overflow from businesses and you pour it into cash flowing assets. That's what an asset is by definition, cash flowing asset. So your cash flow is constantly growing. And some people, when I tell them that, they're like, yeah, when I have a really big overflow of money, that's when I'm going to do that. And I'm like, no, 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 you don't have to wait till you have a big overflow of money. You actually have access to things right now that could create that overflow. No one's ever taught you how to do that. And so if you're serious and not just curious about really building more freedom and stability into your life through cash flow, right? The way that the biggest names from, whether it's Berkshire Hathaway and Warren Buffett or other great investors that there's a difference between a business owner and an investor.
Mm.
And I love them both because I love the game of business and I know you do too. But at the end of the day, there's going to be a day where I don't want to go to work. And I don't
Yeah.
want to just all crash in that moment. Start building it now. It actually doesn't take that long. And it's not nearly as difficult as writing copy or other hard things that we do as entrepreneurs. Like our skill sets
That's
are like
that's so
significant.
good to hear.
It's not nearly that hard. Like I met this guy the other day who literally had a net worth like $300 million. And all he did, I was like, what do you do? He's like, well, I like buy storage units and I just have investors buy them and I own a percentage of them. And it's like, storage units. He's like, yep. You see how boring that is? That's like, they're like, it hurts my soul to think about doing that all day. But nevertheless, he's worth hundreds of millions of dollars, right? And it's like, what are his skill sets? Well, he learned how to raise money and he learned how to reinvest that money into boring cash flowing assets that everybody knows, like, no big risk there, right? And so I want the same for you. I want the freedom for you. So if you're interested, click the link below this video and yeah, join us. We're looking forward to having you. Steven.
Dude, I'm so excited. I'm so excited to attend. And guys, I hope you all go. Like, if I want to echo something I asked my dad. My dad's a very successful coder, very in his space. He's kind of a famous coder. And I said, Dad, why are you so successful? Right? Why have you been so successful in your career? And he said, he was an executive at IBM, and IBM would fly him around to Japan, and then he'd go talk with NASA, and then he'd go to Toyota, and then he'd go, and IBM would just send him all over, and he'd figure out what the problem was. He'd come back to IBM, and they'd architect together a solution, put a team around it, and they'd send him off to the next one. So he's gone a lot of my childhood, but that's what he did. And I said, why are you so successful? And he said, I learned early on that I do not know how to know. I don't have to know how to do everything. He said, I need to know the language. So he's like, I can speak. He told me straight up. He said, the reason I'm so successful is because I can speak salesman. I can also speak a little bit of marketing. I can speak front end development. I can speak back end development, architect. I can speak executive. He said, I stopped trying to go learn how to do everything. So I'm hoping that everybody on here, you understand that like what Joe is talking about. And I'm excited to attend the first time myself as well for the same reason that I don't actually want to know how to do everything you're doing, but I need to know the language. And it's been a really key piece for me to recognize, like, yes, stop learning everything, stay in my cash creating lane. But if it just sits in my bank, it's going to find other homes and be real sneaky. So I'm excited to come learn, man. Guys, go check out Joe's event. Yeah,
Thanks so
psyched
much.
about it.
Appreciate you having me. Nice hanging out with everybody here. See ya.
Hey guys, to join us live, go to cashflowempirelive.com/Steve. Again, this is a 5-day event with a small lesson each day of the new money strategy. It's one thing to go learn how to make money. It is a very different game to learn how to keep it and what to do with it to protect it. So again, that link is cashflowempirelive.com/Steve. Can't wait to see you guys there.